I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Victoria. I'm so excited to have you. We've actually been talking for, oh my gosh, almost half an hour before this. So I already feel like I know you so well.
Each other, right?
But for those that weren't, of course, part of our conversation, tell us a little bit about your background, because you have a very interesting story of how this all came to be.
Well, it may be interesting to you, but I've lived my life, so it's kind of boring, but I'll say it anyway. So I immigrated with my parents from South Korea. And I remember, so I was kind of fully formed individual when I left. And at the time I left, just to give you a quick, like a background on this, on why we left and what we were looking for. And so basically in South Korea at the time, and it's still true in many parts of Asia, that girls were not as desirable as boys. So in we had a larger than a average home there. We weren't super rich or anything, but we had everything we needed in this little island. And every so often, my mother would actually open the front door and there'd be an infant girl, like literally all wrapped up in front of our door. And I remember there was an orphanage behind, a few blocks behind us, and the orphanage didn't have a sign because they didn't want the mom to be like shameful, ashamed of bringing their baby over there. So there was no sign. It was kind of hidden, and a lot of people thought our house was the orphanage. But we ended up with this baby, a lot of little girls there. So I remember her saying, if that baby was because I was always wondering, like, where did the baby come from? But anyway, my mother would say, well, she would explain to me that if that baby was a boy, that mother would have died before she would give up the child. So in that setting, in society-wise, they were recovering from a civil war that divided North and South. 20, 30 years down the line, they were still recovering from it economically and socially. And so my father felt that since he had 4 girls, that life would be better for his children if they came to America, where in his mind, all dreams came true. And this was like a promised land. This was the paradise. So we ended up coming to America, and we waited many, many years. And we finally came to America, waiting for this paradise and all that. And little did I know at the time where we were was paradise, because, we had a strip of beach all by ourselves, except for the orphanage behind us. So came here, he found out that all the money that he had were frozen in both countries. So he ended up with $30 in his pocket. So the first several years of our lives here were just pretty rough. I don't know if many of your listeners know what East Los Angeles is like, but it's where the home of the Rodney King riots, the recent riots, and I went to school for the first time. I actually saw barbed wires. They were around my school actually, and so it was pretty rough. And so from that beginning, I just want to say one thing. At that time, I used to tell my dad, like, the American dream is just a dream. It's like you dreamt it up, you watched TV or you read some books, but that's never going to come true. And but we had nothing. I remember the one incident, because I kind of blocked all that time out of my memory, except for the one thing that would just always stay with me. He went out and bought an orange. In Korea, we used to have tangerines, like little tangerines, but we didn't have big oranges because it's not a tropical climate. So he bought one single orange because that's all he could afford. And he split it in 8 sections. There were 7 of us total, 5 kids plus, so 4 girls and the youngest was a boy. And, you know, like we went through times when literally we had no idea where food was going to come from. But he refused to go on welfare. He refused to go on any government assistance. I mean, literally, like he went to work the very next day. And at that time, I thought to myself, okay, you know, going back to Korea is not an option because obviously we can't go back. We didn't have any money to buy plane tickets or anything. And staying here is the only choice we have because we don't have any other choice. So what do we do? So as a young kid, I thought to myself, what is the one thing I could do right now to take my mind off of things and do things? And that was learning to speak English. So I asked my father to teach me how to speak English. Well, he didn't speak English either. So he, you know, got a dictionary, like English to English dictionary. In those days, they didn't have a Korean community here in the US. So the only thing he could get was English to English dictionary instead of like an English to Korean dictionary.
Right.
So, you know, he would circle randomly about 200 words a day, 200, 250 words a day. And he asked me to go through as many as I could. So I would write the definition of each word. And then when you write the definition, there were like 10 other words you don't understand, right? Because it's English to English. So I learned that there were American kids my age at that time kind of lived with or functioned fully on 2,500 vocabulary words. So I got to that point. And so from that beginning, I, you know, eventually, as you saw in my bio, started my small company. And I've done over, I'd say well over $500 million in sales. When that bio was written, it was a few years ago. So that's a short story. It took a little while, but.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's like you said, you lived it. So you're like, I don't know, it was just normal, but it is such a, you know, it is such an interesting story. And I think, you know, it helps for people to understand because, you know, I'm in Canada and we hear that all the time, right? The American dream and how wonderful it can be. But, you know, oftentimes we don't hear maybe the reality version of it.
Yeah, but I mean, it can be pretty rough.
Yeah. But what I really think is interesting too is when, you know, to go from, you know, where you were, where you know, like you had said, you were well off, you guys weren't really wanting for anything, and to all of a sudden go to that other side, you know, and then starting your own business. So how was that? Because you're trying to start a business, there's no money to do that. And I think there's a lot of people that are out there that struggle with that, go, well, I would love to, but I need more money.
Yeah, I think my father has passed away many years ago, but if you could talk to him today, and I talked to him, you know, while he was alive, he died quite suddenly. So I had a lot of high quality time with him. He would say to me that it was really unfortunate we got everything taken away, but eventually we did get everything back, but it was too late, you know, like he was financially independent by the time he died. But he would say that that was the greatest blessing in disguise, because when you have nothing, you really don't have choice. There's no buts, you know, there you can't have, I don't have money, you know, I want to do this, but like you don't have, when your choices are reduced down to yes or no, you either go forward or you just sit there and complain and bitch about it all day, you know, so you didn't have a choice. So that's kind of easier. But I would say that I think I bring you and the audience a little different perspective on life, because I went from having, as a kid, almost everything to having absolutely nothing. And that's really hard to, you know, like my parents never really struggled. My mom never worked outside the home. She had 5 kids. And it's culturally at the time in Korea, the people who had money, like you don't have to be super wealthy, but wealthier people typically had like somebody who cooked for them, like a driver, you know, so you had some financial means. And, you know, I don't remember my father ever struggling. I mean, he came home every Thursday or so, took off Friday. And so, you know, it was tough to see my parents, like, I think my dad lost like 40 pounds in the first 3 months or so, like, you know, just pretty fast. And then my mom went to work in a sewing factory. And that was really tough to see. And so what I did was like, okay, well, I'm not going to ever become like my mom or my dad. So that was a lot of motivation for me to do well. And I also felt that they made all these sacrifices for us. And what can I do to pay it back? What can I do to make life a little bit easier for them? So I studied as hard as I can. And I also took care of my younger siblings. And I always woke up like almost the same time as my parents did, which was like 6 o'clock in the morning. At the time, I mean, that was just like a huge sacrifice on my part, no sleep.
Right. Because most kids don't. That's not on their goal list.
Yeah. I felt like I need to let them know that the rest of the kids are going to be okay. So, I took my siblings like on the bus to take them to school. And so, from that point to, so my father and my parents like basically were petrified that their kids are going to live the life that they ended up living. So they kept telling, drilling in my brain, like, you have to go to school, you have to go to college. There was like a kind of tested path to your American dream. And that dream was, go get hyper educated, get all the degrees and get a great job, keep on, working hard. And my dad used to say, even if you have to work 4 or 5 times harder than anybody else out there, you have to do that. And so I did it. I did that. I was like overjoyed when I got accepted at UCLA. And so my dream at that time when I was a teenager was to be able to buy a car, any car of my own, and then be able to rent my own apartment. So by the time I was like 18, 19 years old, that dream came true. My car was a blue Pinto that was like 10 years older than, it's been around for a long time. And the Pinto hatchbacks used to blow up. So there was like a recall, but this car didn't make the recall for some reason. So, we got the whole car for like $1,800. So I drove that car to college for all 4 years. When I got out, I worked really hard. I got great grades. I always wanted to be like an artist or I always thought I would be an artist or a musician because in Korea, women didn't go to work in a business environment. If they went to college, they did home economics or music or art. Right. So that's what I thought I was going to do. And then, that's something I actually did love. So, but my dad said, he said to me, have you ever heard of this guy by the name of Stevie Wonder? And I was like, well, that's odd because my dad wasn't like a rocker or anything like that, but he would ask me that. And I think he researched it because he knew that Stevie Wonder would be relevant to me, at the time, like Superstition, all this stuff was going on. And he said, do you think he ever went to like Juilliard and got a master's degree, at Juilliard? And I said, no, I don't think so. And he says, well, that's the thing about music and art. It's in you. It's not something that you could be taught, right? So you don't have to go to college to do that. And he said, by the way, like Van Gogh and all these people died broke. Okay. Like they were literally begging people for, to feed their families. So including Mozart. So he said like, artists don't make any money until they die. So he made me he highly advised me to go to business school. So I ended up getting degrees in business. I did end up getting great jobs, but what I was doing was I was actually going to have to leave my children home with a nanny or somebody like that. And it didn't feel right to me that because as a kid growing up, I mean, from the day I landed here, I rarely saw my parents. Right. I mean, they worked 7 days a week. I rarely saw my parents. And so I thought, I was not going to do that. I was going to have to take a chance, just same way my dad took a chance to come to America. I was going to have to take a chance this time in myself. And so I started my business, even though I had no money. Now, I was told at that time that you were absolutely crazy
for doing this, right?
For doing
what are you
that.
thinking?
I mean, yeah. What are you thinking? And I had like stacks of business cards from my dad's friends and people that I used to work with, we know, I mean, the small business failure rate is like 75% in the first 2 years. And so if you fail, it's not your fault. You're supposed to fail. And if you fail, here's a card, call me first, I'll give you a job. So I had a stack of cards and, I figured I had to kind of make this work. So that's how I kind of, that was the motivation to start my business, even though I had no money or no reason to think that I was going to succeed.
And so what was that path like for you? Because of course, now you're in it. You've started the business. And did you quit your job and then just go and start a business, or was it like a slower progression, like more of a side hustle and then eventually moved into it?
Yeah, I wanted to so badly start it as a side hustle, but it was not possible because I commuted about 90 minutes each way. So when you live in LA, that's very common, by the way. 60 minutes is a very common commute. So 90 minutes each way, it's 3 hours a day. And my average day was like 12 to 14 hours a day. So I got to
Right.
work by 7 a.m. and then I, left work about 6:30 to 7 p.m. every day. So, I had to leave. If I left at 5, like 6 o'clock in the morning, I might be able to get there like 7:15. But if I left at 6 a.m., I'd get there at 8:30. Like, the traffic is crazy. So when you're working those kind of hours, and then I also often took my work home. So it was not possible for me to do the side hustle. So what I did was at the time, I was willing to take a pay cut, and I was willing to live on, very little means so I could spend time with my, kids. And I didn't have kids then yet, but I couldn't imagine myself being pregnant or actually working that job with an infant.
Right.
So I told myself if I could somehow make like just 35 grand, 35, 3 grand a month, 35 grand a year, or 36 grand a year, and work about 20 to 30 hours a week, that would be my utopia. That would be the American dream. And I thought, and my husband, we were dating at the time, but he was also came from a family with no money. He had just lost his dad and everything. So we both of us had nobody to rely on. And so, I thought, okay, how am I going to make the 3 grand a month? And that was my goal, really. And I also felt that a job, like if it didn't work, as long as I was not in debt, that I could still recover my life. Like, I could always go get a job for 3 grand a month, with 2 degrees. So I started it. So now let's go back to the business lesson here about the 3 grand a month. So I thought, okay, well, where am I going to get the 3 grand a month? So in those days, back in 1989, which is when I started, we didn't have we had direct mail, but we didn't have internet. We did not, there was a lot of things we didn't have. We didn't have cell phones. So, it's tougher to find your target audience. And even though I was trained on the target audience, and niche marketing and all that, when it's your business, and I know many small business owners suffer from this very thing, it's really hard to get your head wrapped around the idea that the smaller the niche, the better chance of success.
Right.
You think, oh my God, like there were millions of people out there. Why am I going to, focus on these, 20,000 people or whatever?
Because if I could just get $1 from every single person.
Right, exactly. So,
Right.
Even though I was told to death about all, we did all these case studies and everything about marketing, instinctively they work, but you don't think that applies to you as a small business person. So so my jewelry, I thought, okay, well, I have never met a woman who didn't like jewelry. Okay. I mean, 7-year-old girls, 70-year-old women, they all love jewelry. They buy them for birthdays, and, it's on people's like wish list every Christmas. 75% of women want some kind of jewelry on their Christmas list for the last 50 years. So I'm like, okay, so all the women love jewelry. And I mean, most men have a mother or a sister or a wife or a secretary that they want to buy from. So I'm like, I can sell to all the women for sure. And I can probably sell to half the men, which was really stupid.
A lot of people think like that, right? Like it's true.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, if you can get away with that kind of thinking in any business, it's probably jewelry business, because it is true that most women like jewelry.
Right.
So, I thought my target market was everybody. I thought to myself, okay, that's the one thing I don't have to worry about, the target market. I have to think about that because, I mean, I'm the exception.
Yeah.
So I started marketing to everybody, which is a whole other mistake. But what I did was, so I didn't have a lot of money. And so product development, when you have to sell jewelry, the biggest expense is making samples. Like a mold usually costs about anywhere from $300 to $1,200, depending on the complexity of that. So if you had 10 samples, it could cost you, $1,200, $3,000 up to $10,000, depending on who you get to make your sample with. So that's a lot of money. And yet you can't sell to anybody yet, right? So I thought, well, why make, 30, 40, 50 samples when I have no idea if it's going to sell or not?
Right.
So I thought, okay, surely my designs would sell somewhere because women like jewelry. So I sketched them out on a really nice watercolor pad. I got them at like Aaron Brothers or something like that, and it was like $4 for the pad. And I sketched them out. I went to the local stores. I went to the Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue on Wilshire and Rodeo Drive. That's like the iconic store where all the movie studios shop. So I went down there and I asked the assistant manager if she could give me some help. And I told her, like, I'm, starting out a small jewelry company, and samples cost a fortune. And I'm just trying to get some feedback to see if she thought that she could sell, these types of designs in her store. And she was like, oh my God, these are beautiful. And, they're so like elegant. And she just went on and on and on about how much she liked them. And she said, do you mind, could you leave your sketch pad here? Because a lot of our clients, high-end clients who are in the studios or movie stars themselves, or people that are surrounded with stylists, they don't want things that are in the case. They want things that nobody else has. So she asked me if I could, basically, she said she would call all her top clients. So she ended up actually getting me like the first few orders. And then I went to the Saks next door, went to all the stores. And then I realized at that time, because I was going for everybody, remember that was my target market.
So, the world.
The world, yeah, exactly. So I thought, surely like that, these styles would sell here in, on Rodeo Drive, because everything sells in Rodeo Drive. So how can I sell more? So then I went through all the other outlying, about 40-mile radius. That's one thing about being in LA, you have tons of stores. So I went through all these other stores. At the time we had, Bullock's, iMagnet. These are like right now they have become Macy's and Bloomingdale's and all the different stores. So I went through all the different stores and did the same thing. And I ended up with like 8 styles that I had like orders from already. And they were pretty mass, like everybody, out of all the styles I sketched. So that was the genesis of my business. So I guess when you say you don't have money, we're talking about, thinking outside the box. I don't even think I was thinking outside the box at the time. I just didn't have the money. So, the only thing I could do was communicate with them about the styles that I had. So by, going back to my experience with getting the first few orders, let's think about this now. I was able to kind of communicate my product, my desire to start my company in a certain way. And then when I went to see these department managers, I just simply asked for help, and I was being brutally honest. I told them I don't have money. I'm starting my company. I'm just getting some feedback from them. I don't think I could even deserve to get orders or anything. But they clearly saw a little bit of themselves in me, because a lot of the people that work there, they aren't rich. That's why they're getting hourly pay and they're working. And to see how vulnerable I was and how authentically honest that I was. So they wanted to give me a chance. They did what they could to help me. And I took that opportunity to really kind of expand it to everybody around that area. So that was the beginning. And so did I answer your questions about how?
Yeah, no, you did. And I think that that's a key point, because I think that that's a point that a lot of, business owners forget, is that you need to get out there and ask for help. Like, that's such a good example of, like some people on the outskirts, like, just looking at your story or reading it might go, well, that was really lucky that she happened to get those orders. But it wasn't. Like, if you wouldn't have put yourself out there and you wouldn't have said, look, I just need some feedback, because oftentimes we create an idea and we think that it's brilliant, and we forget to ask other people, do you think this is brilliant too?
Right, exactly. And, that's the other thing too, is I was able to tweak my designs a lot. Like, some of them, they say it's too dainty, they want it bigger. Some of them, they wanted more streamlined. So I did get some great feedback. But going back to the $35,000 a year now, I basically went to, in those days we had travel agents, and I'm like, who buys jewelry anyway? Like, who actually are the most obvious people to buy jewelry? So it's, people who have the means to travel, who have, go to resorts. So I thought, okay, I'll go to the travel agents, and they had like books, like, yellow pages thick, very, very thick books of all of the resorts, because they had to book these, resorts for their people. So this is before the digital age. So I would just go down there and borrow like the book. I mean, I would just go through them because the travel agencies used to have several of these books. And I wrote letters to, and so the second biggest problem I had was, in those days, before websites were, a thing, people used to send direct mail, and they would send like these very thick catalogs. I mean, these beautiful glossy catalogs were everywhere. Those catalogs were anywhere from, if you color catalogs, they were, usually thicker paper, and they were somewhere between $8,000 to $30,000 without a model, okay, because of the photography and the way they used to print catalogs. And, I didn't have the money. So what I did was whenever I did have the samples eventually, and my business got going a little bit, and I mean, my orders were like, $500, $1,000. There was no way I was going to get $30,000, $40,000 worth of profits to make a catalog with. And I didn't even have enough styles to actually do a whole catalog, to be honest.
Right.
So what I would do is I would actually take pictures with like a Polaroid camera.
Yep.
That used to be a big thing. And in the beginning, I used to take a Polaroid camera, and I would take 4 of those pictures, just 4, and with a cover letter. And I would send it to companies like Neiman's and tell them, hey, these styles are fresh off the press, like they're brand new. They didn't even make it to our catalog, which I didn't have a catalog, but they didn't know that.
They didn't need to know that.
Well, I was going to say the word yet, but whatever. So it didn't make it. And these 4 styles I thought would be lovely for your collection, because, I went to your store and I, noticed that you have, XYZ, but you don't have these. And so if you wanted, you could have it for exclusive. And I did the 4 because the 4 of them in those days was like the perfect number for a first class stamp. The first class stamp was like 9 cents.
Right.
And so I did 50 of those letters a day, every day. So I did, all the department stores. I did all the travel. There were thousands of travel agencies all over the world, and I did all the specialty. We had a lot of specialty stores back then, and then all the jewelry stores. And so when I sent out 50 a day, I thought, okay, well, the direct response rate was typically somewhere between 2 to 5%. And I thought, okay, well, if I sent out 50 a day, that's like 250 a week. So, within a month, if I get like, 5 to 10 people call me back, that would be a pretty good rate. So I decided that the $3,000 a month was going to be pretty achievable if my hit rate was like even at 2%. But if I got the 5%, it would be a total bonus. So, I did basically a lot of little trunk shows at the stores, and I did them with a lot of lookbooks, like in a pre-sale. I also went to a lot of the small wholesale marts and, got those little orders. So that $3,000 a month wasn't that difficult. It's growing at later on that was more difficult. But, and the other, talk about thinking outside the box. Like when I started actually getting orders, even if it's $500 here, $1,000 there, a $5,000 order as you grew, the biggest problem with jewelry is like you needed like a jewelry safe. And those safes, like you see in the movies, they're like floor to ceiling safe. They're like, like 10 inches thick. They're usually bulletproof, fireproof, all that. They cost like at the time, I want to say they were like $5,000 to $10,000 per safe.
Right.
And you needed a place to house it. I started my business out of my little 2-bedroom apartment, which wasn't secure. So I was like, okay, well, what do I do? Well, there was no way I was going to be able to do that. And then once you have that, you have to get the jeweler's insurance, which is a lot more expensive than regular insurance. Regular insurance doesn't cover jewelry theft, all that. So I actually decided, since I don't have a ton of jewelry, and jewelry, remember, like a diamond necklace is like that little. So I didn't have a lot of jewelry. I went to the bank next door, about 2 blocks down the street. Bank of America actually has a lot of safes you can rent. And those safes, like the big safes, with more than, they were big enough to handle all my inventory. And, they were like $120 a year. The largest box was $120 a year.
Oh, wow.
So it was basically $10 a month. So that was worked out to be a pretty good solution because it's a lot. Yeah, I didn't have to have an alarm system. I didn't have to have any of that stuff. So I was literally expense free.
Right. That's great thinking.
It's great thinking comes out of necessity. So
Right.
if I started
Yeah.
my company with $30,000, I probably would have done the catalog, would have done the safe, would have done this, and I would have no money, right? So, I mean, I'm just going to encourage all of you who listening that I started my business pretty much risk-free, and every business could be started with risk-free. I mean, I could take anybody's business right now and make that risk-free. You just have to be willing to do a lot of work. You got to be willing to be extremely consistent. And also remember, my goal was just starting from, I want to make $3,000 a month to going to 500 million bucks. I have no idea. I had no idea when I started it. I mean, my utopia was $3,000 a month.
Right.
And, I hit that number like the first year for sure. And then I think the second year I hit more than $1 million and just kept growing since then.
Yeah. And so what point did you hit? Like, do you remember thinking back to that? Was there like a point that you were like, okay, this is bigger than I thought it was. This is,
Yeah.
I've now surpassed that. Now what is my next goal? Because of course you did end up really, really big, ended up on TV. And so let's talk about that jump.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. By the way, in the middle of all of this, I did have to, which we're not going to go into right now, but I did have to readjust my thinking regarding my target market. And the target market in the beginning was everybody. And when I'm just going to go over one thing in today's terms. I don't want to go back to what I did, but what it looks like today.
Yeah.
When I was sending out letters to, the Neiman Marcus buyers and all these different buyers, those letters were highly curated for each buyer. So that was, a lot of my time. But today, if you were placing like a Facebook ad, if you were placing a Facebook ad, like a social media, if you were placing a post on Instagram or, whatever, and you were your target market was everybody. You might say something like, oh, I'm Tanya and I have, this beautiful line of jewelry that I created and, everything is beautiful and, everything is high quality. And I'm offering this to you at 35% off just for today. And just to make it much more, desirable, if you act right now, I'll give you another 15% off. Okay. So this could be your ad.
Right.
Now that ad didn't say anything about who, the taste level, who it caters to, right? It's beautiful jewelry. You kept saying it's beautiful jewelry. Well, the word beautiful is subject to whoever is listening to, right? So, but here, think about it this way. If you if you were doing an ad, so my target market eventually became working women who worked outside the home, because we were the first generation of women who worked in a managerial position. So we went to work, wearing like little suits, like men's suits. And, we had like white shirts, we didn't dare show any our skin or anything like that. So, we all looked the same. Women all looked the same. So my jewelry eventually were targeted for daytime jewelry for women who went to work. Before then, it was like nighttime jewelry was really fancy social stuff. And then daytime jewelry was junky, like a lot of plastic brass looking things that are clanky. So they didn't really have tasteful jewelry that you could wear to work, corporate environment. So if you were to place an ad today to that woman, you want to say something like, hey, hey, I designed this wonderful, elegant jewelry collection that will make you stand out in your workplace. That looks elegant. It will definitely, polish you, finish up your look. And, and it adds a little bit of edgy feminine side to you. It will definitely exude the aura of success. And by the way, the entire collection is under $200. Now, you can see how that one, you can say, all the working women outside, you could actually target corporations, corporate women or vice presidents if you were doing that on LinkedIn. you can see how much easier that was. So my target market really was that working women who, and I kind of upped the ante later on and said something like, because a lot of us women who went to work at that time, they had nannies or caretakers, or their kids went to school, like nursery school, preschool, daycare. And there was a lot of guilt associated with working that, pretty much 16-hour days outside the home. So I would say something like, by the way, all of these pieces that you're buying today, because they're all done in gold and silver, they're heirloom pieces. Your daughter is going to enjoy that. She's going to know a little bit about your personality. And there's nothing else that you can spend $200 today that's going to give you enjoyment for 50 years. And when you're done, your daughter is going to treasure that. So now the market was it became the irresistible offer, right? Because in the things that the little suits that we hated were $400 or $500. So it became a irresistible offer. So now you go from there, and literally, like, I had no idea what happened. Everywhere I went, I just got orders like crazy. And so my business grew a lot faster than I ever imagined. And we really toyed with the idea that, do I really want, what would my life look like now? I don't want my business to run my life, because the whole point of me starting my business so I can spend more time with my kids. And I didn't want to, basically spend all that time in my business. So I had to learn how to, up to this point, by the way, my business became global. So my whole life story is about finding solutions, because I refuse to bend. I have the non-negotiables. And of course, I'll bend on everything, but those non-negotiables were not negotiable. So I had to find ways to deal with this. So one of those things was that I always kept in mind, my time with my kids is non-negotiable. So what happened was, because right about that time, the world was opening up, and we were getting the first computers and the first cell phones, like all this stuff was coming around the first 5 years of my journey. I was able to take advantage of the international time zone, and I was able to open up retailers like Harrods London. So London was 9 hours ahead of me. So when I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was actually calling people before my kids have to be dropped off at school, I had about 2 hours where I could do business in Europe and East Coast.
Right.
And I really lucked out, because most of my buyers, national buyers, were located in New York. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's their 9 a.m. And I would catch them first thing I would hit them. And we were doing mostly by phone. So it was great. And then whatever they asked for, or whatever issues we had to resolve in terms of reorders or, new collections and all that, I would leave them a voicemail if they're not there. But by the time I dropped my kids off for a couple more hours, I, fed them breakfast and all that, and came back and I resumed my work. It was like their lunchtime. So I was able to hit them 2-3 times. Now, I always picked them up about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And from 2 to 6 p.m., I didn't do any work. So I was able to just spend all that time with them. And then, 6 to 8 p.m. or so, we had dinner as a family. And then 9 p.m. California time is about noon Asia. So I was able to do production in Asia, but I also had, little boutique stores inside department stores in Japan. So my business became global before it was kind of fashionable,
right?
Because I had to. That's the way I had to work, and to this day, that's my schedule. My kids are now in their late 20s, but it's still I kind of like that schedule. And so I'm just saying, all you working moms out there, all the buts, I don't want to sound like I'm heartless, but I will say that there's a lot more ways to achieve your goal than you think there are. Open up your mind, and you can't believe. And, this is the other thing. I remember one time it was Veterans Day or something, where the whole world is open except the schools. So I had the kids in my office, and they were yelling and screaming, and they were throwing things at each other. And my customer, I think she was the buyer for United Airlines duty-free program. They used to have in-flights, and, they were a huge account of mine. I think I did $4 or $5 million a year with them. And she said, "Oh, where are you?" And I said, "At my office." She goes, "It sounds really loud." And like, I hear all these kids, crying or something. And I said, well, there are only two kids and they're both mine. And they are really loud and obnoxious. I hope it doesn't bother you. And she was really, she started laughing. She was really taken back because a lot of moms didn't do that in those days. They would hide their kids. They would act like they didn't have kids, and I'm like, they're my kids and they are obnoxious and they're really loud, but that's what I've got here to work with. All the schools are closed today. And, we had an amazing relationship because like, we can all sympathize with that. So just be real, be honest, and, be who you are. Like, if they don't like it, they weren't going to be your friends in the first place, and
Yeah.
There are so many customers out there. You don't have to please everybody. So if some of those moms didn't, they hated me because my kids were, noisy in the back, the one time they called, that's too bad.
Yeah. And I think that's true because I think too many times people go, well, I'm not going to look professional. I'm not, so I can't do stuff like that. And I mean, I feel for you too. I brought my son to work with me all the time. I can't tell you how many times he was underneath the desk and I was rocking him with my foot when he was a baby. Like I wasn't purposely trying to hide him, but I was also like, same thing. I didn't want to put him in daycare. And why? For the hour that you're in my office? Otherwise, he was there and it served me really well when, in hindsight, when I started getting employees and I was like, well, just if it's the day off school, bring them to work. Like we have a huge area in the back. They might as well play in there. Right. And I realized that it was helping me with staff retention because people were grateful for that. Yeah. There were so many benefits that at the time I was just like, well, I don't care. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
So I think it's really like, I love your tip about really set your non-negotiables and figure out how to work around that because there are ways. And especially today with everything, being on it's so easy to be on such a global and international level that there really is, you really can't use that excuse anymore because you can work there's always somebody who's open.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too is I think that, I've had, being open-minded, I've had just a few non-negotiables, but everything else I was willing to work around it. I was willing to bend. I was willing to do, more than all the business partners could. But if you're really focused on who you are and you're being honest, I have friends, I have beautiful relationships that I built. I've never lost a customer. Every single one, they're still with me. That was really hard. This is why I really had a tough time retiring the first 2 times I tried it. But I tried it.
Which is what most entrepreneurs. What retirement are you on? 3.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I have friends like in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, all of Europe, all of Latin America. I've had to build these relationships, and so what time is it over there? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, like 11 o'clock or midnight or something like that. And so I'm talking to a woman out in Bahrain, and she's like, oh my God. I said, and I'm like, why are you up? She goes, why are you up? So we're, she's like, don't you ever sleep? I said, no. I probably, I do little cat naps and, same thing. Like we have same issues as moms. And so I think that you end up with more authentic, longer, I actually am so blessed that I have customers who actually care about my well-being. Like I've heard so many people like reach out to me in the middle of COVID, how is your family? Like we don't talk business. And that's really special. And I think that, if you're right now, and I know, in my podcast, my audience is about half the people are current business owners. And then you have about a third of those people who are aspiring business owners, like they have a side hustle going. And I just want to say that everything that I've done was, you might look at that and go, and I had somebody tell me the other day, like, it was a different time, like things are different now. And I said, oh, well, hell yeah, things are different. And I said, let me tell you, I lived at the time when there was no internet, okay? And I lived now, and I can tell you the difference. The difference is things are so much easier. Mm-hmm. But first off, do you know what it was like in 1989 to be a female business owner? Oh, come on. Like we were the joke of the century. Yep. Even as I was doing, over $10 million a year, people would look at me like I'm not legitimate. like, they look at me like, oh, she's a small business. Oh yeah, let's figure it out. Because like, I remember even at our local country clubs, a girlfriend of mine one day told me, do you realize you make more money than 99% of the men at this club? And yet like they would have, they would have things like Mrs. Wieck whenever I would like go to the club and we would sit there, it's like I didn't exist apparently because, if you're, I have friends whose husbands have been dead for 20 years and they're still like Mrs. So-and-so,
Right.
So
yeah.
I'm just saying that it was tough to, just be taken seriously. So when you go anywhere and you have a business idea or you want to collaborate with somebody, you're the last person to be heard in the room. So, you don't have to be the loudest, the meanest person in the world, but, it just made things difficult. Second thing is all the tools, like I had to spend I think I spent like almost $10,000 in the first year buying things like the personal computers. When they first came, they'd like 286 megahertz or something like that, and they were like $4,000 a piece. Yeah. So I got that, plus I got a fax machine. The fax machines were expensive. So, I didn't dare getting on that.
And so was the thermal paper you had to buy for it.
Oh, exactly. And the phone lines, the 1-800 numbers. So, these things are all free now. Come on, like guys, like everything, we got like Google Calendly is free. All of your, YouTube's free. Let me tell you, all the things that are free today that I had to pay for, like the first year, all the money I made, like you went right back into investing into the business that nobody now takes us seriously. You don't even need a landline today, right? You basically have a cell phone line. You pay for like a program for 10 people in your home. And that's how you can run your business. Internet, if you can't afford internet, you can go to Starbucks and go run a business. I know plenty of people who've done that. Yeah. So, I would say that today things are exponentially easier for an aspiring entrepreneur. At the time I did it, like I didn't have a choice to have a side hustle. Today you can. I actually have a program where if you can spend 20 hours a week, I'm talking including Saturday and Sunday. So if you're talking like 3 hours a day, you can run $1 million business. You can. And you just have, and you don't, I'm sitting here telling you right now, I started this broadcast with introducing myself, and it's all your fault because you tell me, okay, the degrees that I got, okay, they were completely useless. I'll tell you why they were useless. The MBA program, and I went to some of the best schools, UCLA and USC, they're at top 20 in everything, in every metric. And I was a great student, but MBA schools typically teach you how you can impact a corporate environment. They teach you how to interview ultimately you want to be like a senior manager, you want to become a CEO of a major company. Okay. So like when you set your goals, like, let's say they teach you how to set your goals, how to be measurable, all this stuff. Okay. You do everything you're supposed to. And let's say, COVID hits because, and through no fault of your own, you end up missing your goal by, 50%. Well, you can go back to your company and say, Mr. CEO or the stockholders, there was this thing called COVID, and, our country got slammed, and, I couldn't meet my goal. So instead of hitting, 20% increase versus last year, I'm now down 50%. Okay. Now, depending on where you were before COVID and depending on what excuses you have, you probably could keep your job, or in the worst case scenario, you get fired, you get a new job. You do that as a small businesswoman with no money, you're bankrupt. Okay. Yeah. You're going bankrupt. And there's no safety net. So when you do your goals, you can't go through the same kind of goal setting that like a corporation would, because they have no risk. There's no personal risk to you. So you can go spend all the money you want. You can try 6 different advertising campaigns. We don't have that. We got to be hitting that in the bullseye, when you're a small business owner. So all the things that, all those degrees, I've actually had to unlearn my MBA. There are a few things that actually did help out, but most things I've had to unlearn that. And, you might ask, okay, well, why do you unlearn that one? Can't you just throw it out? No, you can't, because like I'm still getting letters from alumni associations from all these schools, and they're telling you what's working in all around the world. They're telling you so and so. One of our alumni gave a speech about this or that, and this is working, that's working. So you're listening to this and you're going, okay, in the middle of COVID, 6 different people said that's working, and I'm going contrary to that. What makes me, is this really for sure? Like, instead of going by your instinct, you're all constantly checking yourself, and you're losing time. You're losing precious time. So, you don't want to be the idiot. So you're constantly I still do this right now. So I think that, and before we got our show started, we talked about the joke in my family, and my family, the most successful person in my family is the one that didn't go to college. There were 5 of us. And let me tell you something. I've got a neurosurgeon. Okay, the neurosurgeon actually is one of the top-notch neurosurgeons at UCLA. Okay, so these people are just real. They're all my family members. So I got the neurosurgeon. I got 2 lawyers. I've got I got 2 doctors, 2 lawyers, and the one that didn't go to college actually had to help out down payment with all the rest of them. So she actually has a lot of common sense, a lot of grit. And she works smart, and she works super smart, and she works nonstop. So when you're working super smart and you're working nonstop, the benefits come. So, all I can say is that no matter where you are in life, get started on something. And I'm, somebody that I live my life. I think my life is pretty boring, and which is good. I mean, I don't need scandals in my life. It's good. I've got kids that still talk to me, and nobody's doing drugs yet or anything. I don't have any, major issues. But I would just say that no matter what life throws at you, you have, and I know that every podcast, it seems like almost every podcast, every speaker, speaks about, inspiration, motivation, encouragement, self-belief, and all of these things. And they're all necessary, and it's good, but I will tell you this, only actions matter at the end. You can be inspired all day long. You can go to every seminar, you can go to every mastermind, but actions matter. And I'm not talking about big actions. I'm talking about little things. Remember, I learned to speak English as a second language way back, because when I couldn't speak, when I didn't know a single word. I basically knew maybe hello. I basically started sketching out like what I wanted to talk about. Like, when I was saying something to my teachers at that time, I used to draw things out. So I'm pretty good at Pictionary now. But after that initial phase, and I learned to speak English, I used to paint my feelings. But here's the thing, that single thing, that learning to speak English, that one little thing, eventually got me into college. And now I'm author of 2 different books, right? So I would say that start something now, like today. And that something could be just redefining your goals. Like a lot of times when you don't really have to put action behind it, you can come up with 10 different scenarios of who you want to be. But if you actually start to put actions and say, for example, let's say you want to lose some weight, and, like a lot of people put on some COVID pounds. A lot of us probably ended up with COVID pounds after we went through the Christmas, because that whole thing kind of happened like right around there. So, in my family, we had Thanksgiving, then the Christmas, then New Year's, then we had Chinese New Year, which we celebrate. Then we had my husband's birthday, my birthday. So we had a lot of eating going on. Okay. And then like February came, and then like March, we got hit with COVID. Okay. So, all these people have COVID pounds. And let's say you say to yourself, okay, you know what? I probably should have lost some weight, but like now I definitely need to get on with it, because now it's a proven fact that, if you don't get yourself in shape, you're, exponentially more likely to get, whatever. So you want to lose weight. So if you tell yourself, okay, I'm motivated, I have now reasons to be healthy, so I'm going to eat healthy, I'm motivated, I'm going to like start to exercise, all this stuff. Okay. So you're going to do this like you did like the last 10 years. Well, the fact is 80% of Americans give up their dream of losing weight within the first 2 weeks of them actually setting those goals. But let's say if you set, instead of that, if you said to yourself, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in the next 10 weeks. I'm going to give myself time to do this. And so now you got it down to 1 pound a week. And then you said, and by the way, I'm not a occupational therapist or fitness instructor, but I'm just using common sense here. So if you said, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in the next 10 weeks, and in order for me to do that, I'm going to cut out 300 calories a day. Okay, just 300 calories a day. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, like today, I think I can give up bread, my bread and butter, for dinner. And since I know my type, like I can't give up bread for 10 weeks. So, but tomorrow I'll give up my wine. Okay. And then the next day I'll give up whatever. Right. So you have this rotating goal of losing 300 calories a day. And the days that I can't do the 300 calories a day, I'm just going to walk for 45 minutes. Right. So now at the end of 10 weeks, you might have lost 5 pounds. You might have lost 7 pounds. You might have lost 12. But can I tell you something? 10 weeks from now, if you did in fact lose 10 pounds, just doing that thing, okay? I'm not asking you to go join a gym or anything, okay? This is just doing this one thing. Don't skip meals. You might go, that wasn't so bad. Maybe I will actually take this seriously and maybe I will lose 10 pounds. So the next 10 weeks, you're going to lose 10. That's 15 pounds. That's a lot of weight, right? So when you have to put actions behind it and say, well, somebody said, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in the next 10 weeks. Well, what are you going to do to do that? Then you have to go, maybe I'll lose the 10 pounds in the 12 weeks. But you know what I mean? Like when you don't have to put actions behind it, hey, right now you can set your goal to be a movie star, or you can set your goal to be a, I don't know, scientist. When you have to actually think about the very first action, that's when sort of like your reality kind of hits in, like when I did my thing, it's like $3,000 a month. Like, where are we going to get that from? I thought, okay, well, 50 letters, let's see what happens. If that's not enough, I'll do, 75 letters. And the other thing too, is there are days where I got no response for weeks. I mean, nothing, like nothing. People just hang up on you. And, I gave up for a couple of weeks. I turned on the TV. My husband went to work. He didn't come home till like 6 o'clock. And, don't you dare calling him at work because he was so busy. So, and the whole world was working, So I turned on the TV and, there was like Charlie's Angels. I watched all the reruns. One day my mom called and said, it's really amazing that you can write, like, how do you find 50 people to write to all day? Like, she was kind of, she was asking me, she's not a business person by any means, but she was really proud of me for doing that. She was the only one that thought I actually really had a chance of, doing anything. And I thought, oh shit, I didn't write any letters for 4 days. Oh my God, I better like get going,
Well, right now I'm writing to the Charlie's Angels, but
yeah, exactly. So, but the point is, I mean, it's okay. You get off the train once in a while, off the tracks, and it's fine. But, I think what I want to say to everyone who would actually listen to me is this. I am just an ordinary person. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a brainiac. I'm not exceptional in any way. It's just an average person who had very strong goals that and they weren't necessarily all about money, but I had those non-negotiables that I was I was willing to sacrifice everything for. And the funny thing is, by not sacrificing those things, I actually built a bigger business. And I mean, I built a much bigger business because my business is so global that I don't care what happens. Like, I don't have to worry about the world crashing on me, because some part of the world is thriving. And, I'm getting businesses from all over the world, from, small companies, big companies, from all over the world. So I don't ever have to wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, Walmart went out of business, or, whatever, I'm screwed, I'm ruined. I don't have that. And so I built a stronger foundation, a much bigger business, and I was able to be present with my mom and my dad, the rest of my siblings, and my children. My kids, I mean, I was there for their first everything, soccer game. I mean, look, first soccer game is nothing. They're like 4 years old, but it matters to them. They look at these pictures like, Mom, what was I thinking? Well, yeah, you put the goal in the wrong goal, but you're going the wrong direction. But that was your first goal. It was pretty exciting. Their first piano recital, their first everything. And their last. And I'm going to be there for my grandkids stuff as well. So you can have it all, but you have to kind of really believe it's true, and you got to be willing to work for it.
Yeah. And I love that. I think, it's one action and it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. It's just get up, move, and create something.
Because it's
I
a
love
chain
that.
reaction. That the first time I got into Neiman's, I think like everybody, called me and, because they wanted to know who I was, because, Neiman Marcus used to be very prestigious. Ultimately, that's how I got into Harrods London. And once I got to Harrods London, everybody Harrods London was where like the royal family shops. And then I went into Takashimaya, Japan, which is where the Japanese royal family shop. So it's like all the royal families apparently were all kind of, looking at each other. And then I ended up doing a lot of the business in the Middle East, in the, like Saudi Arabia, Dubai, all these places, they had royal families there too. So, I was in those royal circles. I didn't mean to. It just like happened. I had no idea, like there were royal families in Japan, like that were shopping. I mean, I had no clue like any of this stuff was happening. So it's actually the one action continue, they just continue, it builds. It's what we call momentum.
Yeah.
And I think also, my goals, like I lost track of like how much money I was making, all that stuff, like way back. You know what? I'm just going to tell you very honestly. I've never been a money motivated person. Like I told you from the beginning, like, even though I could have made more money, I was willing to make less money to have this time. So, I'm not very good at money and all that. So I have like other people, accountants pay. It's one of those things I really hate doing. And now I can afford to delegate that. So the other day, LifeLock called me, what's your mortgage? And, they wanted to make sure that my account was stayed verified. And I told them I had no clue. So they actually thought I was an imposter. They called my husband to see like if my account's been hacked because I couldn't answer any questions. And I said, all my, bills and everything is all being paid by somebody else. That's been in this way for probably 20 years now. So, but I still enjoy the journey. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy the discovery of, running into problems and being able to solve it myself. And in the process of solving it, you end up creating this whole other, business that you didn't know existed. Right.
Yeah.
So get started in something. And I know that, the world is an amazing place, and people, no matter who the president is, Congress, any of that stuff, you still hold all the cards in your hands. And that's a lot of power you have. And if you choose to just not exercise it, then, you don't get the reward.
Yeah, I love that. So good. So many good things. So tell us a little bit before we go about your books that you have out, and then as well your podcast, and then where people can find you.
So I have a book, My Legacy. I'm transitioning to building my legacy. And in Asia, I'm very much American, but I do like to kind of rob things from different cultures when they're good. In Asia, they say that when an animal dies, the animal leaves its skin because, they used to use them for fur and, things like that. But when a person dies, they leave their name. So, you think of people like, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, you think of George Washington, people like that. They left their name, they left their legacy. So in my new journey, and I'm not quite there yet, but I'm transitioning in that direction, is to create 1 million millionaires, and preferably most of them women, because I feel like they know how to multitask more. There's all these different things, but I'm trying to create 1 million millionaires, and I'm actually putting the infrastructure together for that. So my how-to book is really that. It's Million Dollar Hobbies, and you can take anything you're passionate about and grow it to $1 million. I mean, I've done it, and I've seen, and my podcast is full of people that have done it. I mean, I think not last episode, but the episode before that, I have a guy by the name of Brim. His brand is called Brimstone. And, this guy was a wrestler. He made millions of dollars doing that and became a voiceover actor. So wrestler, voiceover actor, comic book hero, food critic, and then now he owns radio stations. So this guy's made millions of dollars from every single hobby he's had. So, it's not it is, it's not like, I'm not going to say like you just have to think it and you're going to get there. But it is, there are ways you could, if the whole point is if you're passionate about something, you will find a way.
Yeah.
And you'll find a way to be the best. You'll find a way to be the most relevant person. So my book is called Million Dollar Hobbies, and that you can sign up for that for release. And then I have a podcast called Million Dollar Hobbies, and I've got some amazing people that had very similar journeys to mine. I've got you should listen to this one. A guy's name is Daniel Green, and he wanted to lose some weight. He felt really horrible about his body weight because none of his family members had struggled with that, and couldn't find any help. So he started cooking for himself, and now he's the author of 12 different cookbooks. Millions and millions of books later, he's written a couple of books, the Paleo Diet and all that. 12,000 hours of live TV, and he even became a male fashion model. How do you like that, right? So, it's full of that kind of, and I try to bring people from different aspects. Like, one was like a hairdresser, one was like a voiceover actor, and one was like a chef. Like, these are all, you think of hobbies and, you think, oh, they're never going to make any money. Well, guess what? They've all made, tens of millions of dollars doing that. And then I have I don't know if you're interested in this thing or not, but I have a webinar that's coming up. It's all free. And it's about how to make more money and work less. So if you make more money by working, 40 more hours a week, then it's not really all that fun. But it's how to make more money, work less. And it's designed for small business people, how they can get free PR and be visible, so that they can get their, businesses like on the right track to grow exponentially. So they can find all that on my website. It's www.victoriawieck.com. So you will see the Victoria Wieck, the jewelry designer. I'm on ShopHQ monthly. So I've got my own show, and you can connect with me on all my jewelry stuff there. When you get there, you won't normally see my jewelry on display on my site, because my jewelry is sold by so many different people now that I don't feel like I have to ask you to buy stuff on my website. There are like 70,000 people selling my jewelry out there somewhere. So they can come there. You see the Victoria Wieck, the jewelry designer, the author, the 2 books, and then the podcast and all the freebies they're getting. So that's my whole world, my dear.
Yeah, I love that. There was so much good stuff, and I'll make sure that we link, to all of that, and as well the few episodes. I've really been enjoying listening to them. So we were talking about that beforehand, that I was really, I stopped right in the middle of a story before this one, so I'm excited to get back to it.
Thank you, and yours too. I mean, I love what you bring to the table, and it's just amazing. I was listening to the collaboration section, but I can just tell you put your heart and soul into this. And that's what I love about podcasting, is meeting people like you, who have been giving so much of yourself and knowledge, and actually collaborating with other people to come on your show. And I think my story, you can say it's unique, but there is still a common thread of, the hard work, the work ethic, the determination and the persistence that runs through all of your guests. And I think, we've all had it in different ways, but, kudos to you for bringing all of that. Because sometimes, most people need to hear it more than once.
Yeah.
More than one person.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely been, it's so funny because I hear that and I always feel like I'm getting more out of this because I get to meet so many amazing people. I get to, just expand sort of globally and meet these people that I think this is just such an amazing opportunity. Yeah. Like, when else would I have ever been able to sit and have a conversation with Victoria? That just wouldn't happen. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so enjoyable, and we'll have to connect after the recording. Anyways, sounds good. And, good luck to you and everyone who's listening. And it's been such a pleasure.
What an amazing interview. A super big thank you to Victoria for coming on the show and just sharing not only her story, but all of her information and tips. So to learn more about Victoria, as well to sign up for the free webinar that she's hosting on how to make more money and work less, which is something that we all want to do, make sure you head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blogs on the left-hand side of the page. You will see this episode with all of the links to connect with her further, as well to sign up for the webinar. So you're going to want to make sure that you head and do that. I know I'm going to go and sign myself up for it right now. Next week, we have an amazing guest. I can't wait for you guys to hear her. Her name is Aurora Winter, and she wrote an incredible book called Turn Words into Wealth. And I sit and talk with her about so much about her book and how she got to that point. It's a really interesting story, and there's so many great tips. So I'm also going to be doing a special giveaway. So you're going to want to make sure that you tune into that episode so you can get it, because you have to be listening to actually hear it. And if you like putting a face to the name, don't forget you can always head to our YouTube channel and watch these interviews as well as hear them. So no matter what you're doing today, whether you're starting a business with $1 or whether you're like Victoria heading into over $5 million in retail sales, you need to make sure that you take time in every single day to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?